Recently, chapter 1155 graced us with a long-awaited showcase of Pirate Rocks D. Zebek, and it's just phenomenal. I don't really have to say much, and I don't want to turn this into a Rocks glazing sesh. In this chapter, among the greatness of Rocks, we find a narrator box talking about his fighting style, and it specifies it is swordsmanship and has a panel of him lacing his sword in Haki. Now, why are both of these things being shown in the same panel so important? Well, it's because of the long-standing debate of Mihawk versus Shanks. In response to one side's argument of their guy being the world's strongest swordsman, the other frequently tries to draw a distinction between the quote-unquote sword skills of the swordsman and the Haki of the swordsman, then claiming that their guy excels in the Haki aspect and therefore makes them the stronger of the two. Now, the line drawn between skills and Haki isn't exactly out of place, but it implies that only one really is under the umbrella of swordsmanship, when the line between them isn't actually that thick as some would like it to be, and that will be today's point of discussion. Remember, of course, to like and sub if you enjoy. Now, what people like to call sword skill undoubtedly exists. You can fight with 1, with 2, with 3, with 8, even with a mate, or together with your devil fruit. And on top of that, each style can do various things with different utility, like upping your range, cutting certain elements, mimicking some elements, launching yourself off air, having different effects when you swing your sword, not just slashes, and many more I'm sure I'm missing right now. And that was focused on pretty heavily in the pre-time skip with the exception of Devil Fruits. Using Zoro as our main case study, the way he defeated most of his opponents and overcame some of the unique challenges they presented in Battle in Paradise always came with the debut of a new move. Think Phoenix Pound Cannon, Tatsumaki, 9 Sword Style, etc, etc. A new sword skill was always being introduced and added to his moveset, but it's also here where Zoro catches a glimpse of the quote-unquote pinnacle of swordsmanship, later on introduced to us as Haki, just before we set off into the new world. And ever since, the way Zoro has been defeating most of his opponents and overcome some of the unique challenges they presented in Battle in the new world, has been coming with new moves that incorporate Haki. So clearly, as one climbs the ranks of power while being a swordsman, it is very evident that Haki grows to be the determining factor in a fight. That's not even just for swordsmen, but for any fighter in general, right? If your fruit's good enough, I'm sure you don't need to be rolling up to fights with all Haki maxed out, but if you neglect it too much, you'll find yourself sinking to the ocean floor before you know it. At the level of swordsman of Mihawk, Shanks, Roger, Rocks, and a theoretical end of series Zoro, sword skill, although obviously still relevant, doesn't outweigh Haki. In fact, I'd say Haki outweighs it by quite a significant margin. Ever since the introduction of Conqueror's Infusion, the pure power or force of will aspect of swordsmanship is one that's been too hard to ignore. Again, sword skill matters of course, but you're not gonna outskill a magma punch, bro, come on. Are you gonna find the exact line of no influence that like a Quake Punch has on the... Actually, you might, but even then, that's just gonna be an observation feat, right? At the end of the day, like I don't know, bro. This video's gonna be so short. Like I don't know what am I doing? Ain't that right? Ain't that right? Like, sword skill ultimately scales to one's Haki. If you have worse Haki than your opponent, you lose, and you are therefore the worst swordsman. For better or for worse, it is that simple. Especially at the top tier of strength where the skills of any swordsman up here has been practiced for years, right? Like, I don't buy the idea Mihawk's gonna be fighting like Rebecca, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, bro. It's not happening. But Rogito, what if Luffy picked up a sword? He'd be stronger than Zoro. I said both Haki and skill fall under the umbrella of swordsmanship. He would obviously be disqualified. He can't even swing a blade, alright? Now I have to clarify again, what I've been calling sword skill so far is what some of the community refers to finesse with your blade and your techniques, excluding Haki. But there is an official mention of the term in chapter 1058, where Mihawk's bounty is revealed and is directly stated to have greater sword skill than Shanks. The official use of the term is not excluding Haki from sword techniques. Like, I'm sorry, but you have to turn your brain off If you think Brand New is drawing a line between the two, especially when he calls him the world, like he calls Mihawk the world's strongest swordsman, literally in the next text box, bro. Besides, I don't think a sword duel is going to be any different from a Haki duel. In fact, they're the same thing, bro. They're the same thing. You imbue your blade with your will, and whoever is greater comes out on top, right? And I'm including all Hakis as well, not just the ones that you coat your sword with. Future Sight, negating abilities with Conquerors that has been introduced recently, observation killing. It's all part of that at the highest tier. It's all the same thing. It's all a part of that fighting style. There's no reason to differentiate. It doesn't make sense. Because Haki is the only avenue of strength for a fruitless swordsman. What else is there? And in response to this, to support the redundant idea of hard separating Haki and swordsmanship, I see this panel once in a while from Mihawk after he skillfully redirects some bullets coming his ways. He says, without subtlety, a sword is nothing but an iron bar, implying that the subtlety solely comes from the finesse and skill, and Haki is somehow the opposite of that. That's more brute force and comparable to an iron bar. And then I have to ask, right? What is more subtle than the power to cut nothing? Or cut whatever you wish to as you will it? Because I can't think of anything, bro. And don't get me wrong, Haki definitely improves the brute force aspect of your swordsmanship, but to say that it isn't part of the subtlety that Mihawk's talking about, that's tomfoolish, bro. And to be fair, maybe that's the fault of the post time skip in general, right? Maybe it's the fault of the post time skip that a lot of the concepts, spirituality, and difficulty of Haki has been forgotten a bit, since everyone in the new world's got it to stay relevant, and our main character has gotten to the top of the world in a mere 2 years, when it took a lot longer for others to get on that level. And just the final thing before I log off, okay? Let's go back to Zoro real quick and just think about the kind of man that he is. The guy whose goal is world's strongest swordsman, same position that Mihawk holds right now. Do you really think a man who embodies the no excuses mentality in a world that can be as unfair as One Piece is really going to be working towards a title that only works on a very arbitrary technicality? Forget the fact Mihawk only taught him Haki in the time skip and has been making his primary power-ups in that field ever since. You think the same character that after a whole night of fighting Moria had Kuma pulled up on him, didn't complain, and just said, "It is what it is. If I die here, I was only worth that much," he would seek such a title? I just don't believe Roronoa Zoro would seek a position whose strength isn't absolute. Surely, he'd feel like he's cheating Queen somehow. I don't know about you. I'm gonna cut it short there. I've held some stuff back due to a future video in the works because this is ultimately just a proxy debate of Mihawk versus Shanks. That's all this is, right? So I'm just gonna leave it there. Slightly a rant that I had to do today because of all the arguments that I see and I've been seeing for years that came from this chapter. I don't know how we're still doing this Haki man thing in 2025, but you know, here we are. And to be fair, this is less of a like Mihawk is definitely stronger than Shanks video, and it's more like don't separate skill and Haki and then therefore say that Shanks is stronger than Mihawk. There's better ways to argue Shanks over Mihawk that make much more sense, and I'll get to that eventually, but yeah, slight rant for today. So long story short, skill and Haki are different, but as you get stronger, the line between them starts to blur until they basically become the same. Goodbye.